Up until this point, we've covered a lot of things in what I consider to be my favorite Zelda game, Ocarina of Time. Most of us know the story by heart, and there's just this timelessness about it. Going forward, I of course still have tons of video ideas pertaining to this title, but the one we'll be covering today has been slowly reinventing everything we know about this iconic game. It's something I planned on covering last year, but unfortunately I wasn't able to. I'll get to why in a little bit. But today I want to focus on how Link as a character is basically rewriting the existence of his universe in Ocarina of Time, and what is taking place at this moment is truly monumental. So, let's dive in. During the month of October in 2019, something profound happened. As always, YouTube has this weird way of stalking your interests, and it usually knows when you'll be completely enthralled by something it recommends. Other times, it gets it insanely wrong. But in October, I was basically prepping for the holiday season in terms of video uploads, when a gem by Glitches0and0stuff found its way into my feed. Enticed instantly, I gave it a click. Now in this video was something that had just been recently discovered, at least in the scope of Ocarina of Time. The principles for the discovery existed in other exploits, but finding out how to manipulate it in this way was simply amazing. In the video, there was a very specific sequence of commands that took place that ended up changing the item that was inside of a treasure chest, and this set off a series of discoveries that changed everything. But before going forward, I think it's important to cover a few names who are necessary for this breakthrough. As highlighted by Glitches0and0stuff, we have MZX rules for the creation of Spectrum, which is an external memory viewer and editor for Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Fig, who had helped Glitches0and0stuff understand the new toolset and many mechanics associated with it. And Exodus, Spinout, Thorough, Natalia Has Died, and many others whom without their support, this wouldn't have ever happened. So the thing that was discovered was coined as stale reference manipulation. To briefly explain what it entails, Glitches0and0stuff create a follow-up video with commentary. Generally speaking, this mechanic exploits the data tied to an object that Link is currently carrying. As Link moves with an object above his head, the game is constantly updating the X, Y, and Z position values and rotation value of that object in the code. However, through manipulation, these values can be written to other objects. And that's where things start to get exciting, because it isn't just positioning you can affect. It can be tied to other variables coupled with objects that change their state. If you've ever seen people glitch a star into their hands in Dire Dire Docks in Super Mario 64, this is a pretty similar concept, except it's far more powerful in Ocarina of Time because you can write back to any field. Essentially, you can do way more with it, and you aren't as limited. Once the object is manipulated to be unloaded, the values tied to it are still being recorded, except they are messing with another object's data. In this example, the position data from the carried object pointer manipulates what is within the chest, giving Link the prescription, which is the 8th tradable item in the Big Goron sword quest. Depending on Link's positioning, it is possible to get other items as well. Now, this is pretty cool and all, but it's what it led to next that completely shook the Ocarina of Time community. After watching this video, I ended up reaching out to Glitches0and0stuff to ask if he wanted to partake in a video discussing the concept. He was interested, but didn't want to jump into it right away. Honestly, I think given the excitement of what had just transpired, it did make sense to wait to see where it was all going. Because SRM was truly only the beginning to achieving something even more monumental. Producing a video at the time that could be possibly outdated a few days later wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. And during this time, that's when something totally mind-blowing occurred. The mechanics around SRM were used to discover ACE for Ocarina of Time. For those unfamiliar with the term, ACE stands for Arbitrary Code Execution. It refers to a way to input code into the game through specific actions the player does. After the discovery for ACE, it wasn't too long until the foundation began crumbling for the route that speedrunners have been utilizing for years. I won't go into extreme details about how all this was done, because I'm certainly not the expert here, but I do highly recommend watching Glitches0and0stuff's video on the concept after you're done with this one. You can find a link down below in the description, alongside the original coding for the run by a user called MrCheeze. The recap for this route, which I'll be explaining, was discovered largely by MrCheeze, with assistance by Thorough, Jalon012, and Natalia Has Died. It involves manipulating a rock's data so that with SRM, the position and rotation data can be applied to something else. Through a series of events involving chopping signs, locking the camera, and moving Link through the Kokiri Forest loading zone with the rock, this ACE setup begins to take place. Code is further manipulated by the rotation of the slingshot's ammo pellets, alongside eventually referencing the actual file name for the save file. Lastly, custom inputs on multiple controllers end up introducing further custom code, influencing what cutscene is loaded when we finally let our camera pull a specific rock into view. This then kicks off the credit sequence after Link falls through the void, thus completing Ocarina of Time in the quickest way currently possible. Like I said, that's the Cliff Note analysis about this. I definitely recommend checking out the supplemental videos that showcase the concept in its entirety. But this in itself is pretty absurd, because while completing the game as fast as possible is obviously super exciting, it's simply the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what can be done with this exploit. By having the ability to change the values of objects within the game, and by injecting new code through controller inputs coupled with SRM mechanics, Link can essentially become a god. Mind you, it's the player granting him this ability, but this technically allows someone to edit the game as they please from within the game. Granted, it's extremely absurd to execute anything this way, but the ability is certainly there. But that raises the question. Obviously, mods and hacks change the experience of the game. Introducing aspects externally through these methods is completely different than having changes take place through the game itself. Where does one draw the line though? We've already been utilizing wrong warps and other mechanics for speedrunning for quite a while. Does Ace break the mold? If you're free to create any type of skip or warp you want, does this destroy speedrunning? If Link can rewrite the entire game as he pleases, who's to say he couldn't farm key quest objects and equipment, basically breaking other speedrun categories like the 100% category? It makes you wonder. I imagine it won't be long until Ace is banned in most categories, if it hasn't been already by the time this video is out. I suppose we'll see though. From a possibility stance, the sky is truly the limit. Watch out, Melee Fox and N64 speedrunner Mario, there's a new sheriff in town, and he controls time and existence as a whole.
So normally this is where the video would end, but this video has been delayed and delayed over and over due to new updates constantly rolling out. So I'm going to quickly recap where things are currently at as of this week. The world record for any percent is now almost below 8 minutes, which is absolutely incredible. The current route has been refined to actually remove the need for the third controller inputs and the positioning of the slingshot seed. Instead, most of the new actions are written specifically through just Link's motions, the angle he is facing, and by now utilizing the actor, that is the invisible rupee that appears when jumping across the water. That rupee has a particular branch instruction that will only activate when you're looking in its direction. That branch is leveraged, utilizing the angle of the dropped non-existent rock to then jump into Link's instance. Link's instance contains a manipulable word comprised of 2 other angles, which then we can use to point to the file name. We then walk into the loading zone of the nearby house and the credit sequence plays out. This current route has been a combination effort of MrCheeze and Baamonde building upon the previous Ace principles that the original route entailed, while borrowing from an idea that user Seedborn had from Majora's Mask. It's very possible this record is going to continue to get broken again and again, as this process becomes more refined. But it's absolutely incredible that the game is getting finished only minutes after the intro sequence has begun. It's truly remarkable. Before signing off, I do want to thank MrCheeze for walking me through a lot of this while making this video, as none of it would have been possible without his help.
And with that, I highly recommend watching the videos I mentioned earlier. You can find them on screen now and in the description below. Thanks for watching, guys and gals, and until my next video, cheers.